Do you feel like failure is a reoccurring pattern in your life, or do you always tend to give more than you get in relationships? These are only two life trap patterns that might have developed due to your dyslexia. And becoming aware of these patterns can be truly life-changing. In schema therapy, these patterns are called schemas. And together we're going to go over the ones that I see most commonly among my coaching clients. I'm going to tell you how these patterns actually connect to the dyslexic experience, and then we're taking a look if some of them might actually apply to you. The video you're watching right now is actually the second version because I decided to re-upload this video after I took a look at the comment section. You guys let me know that this video is kind of mind-blowing and that it is important information, but you also told me that it can be a bit overwhelming and uncomfortable to be confronted with your own behavior, and that makes a lot of sense. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a warning before you continue to watch this video. And I also wanted to end on a more positive note. So that is why I added another chapter where we're going to talk about how you can overcome these life traps. Now let's get back to the original part of this video. Before we go into the individual life traps, I would like to read you a definition of the founder of schema therapy, Jeffrey Young. He writes, "Almost everyone repeats negative patterns from childhood in self-defeating ways. This is a strange truth with which therapists contend, and also people that are coaches. Somehow we manage to create in adult life conditions remarkably similar to those that were so destructive in childhood. A life trap is all the ways in which we recreate these patterns." So this book, by the way, is called Reinventing Your Life by Jeffrey Young, and I absolutely recommend it. The first life trap that I want to tell you about is the failure life trap. If you have developed this one, you feel inadequate in terms of your achievements. You feel like you've failed comparatively to your peers. And in childhood, you were made to feel inadequate in terms of your achievements. And they even write that you may have had a learning disability. So I would see this life trap as the core life trap for dyslexics. Now, we tend to be quite aware of this pattern, and it is often connected to a lot of painful feelings. Now, in adulthood, you ensure that this pattern reoccurs by acting in a way that recreates failure over and over again. You're likely to have this life trap if the following statements apply to you. I feel I'm less competent than other people in areas of achievement. I'm working below my potential. I feel humiliated by my failures in the work sphere. I was a failure as a student. The defectiveness life trap seems to be a more generalized version of the failure life trap. Both of them affect our self-esteem, and if you develop this pattern, you feel like you as a person are flawed and defective. And as a child, you were not really respected for who you were. Instead, you were criticized a lot. And that led you to believe that you're fundamentally unlovable. Now, as an adult, you feel afraid of love, and you find it hard to believe that other people value you, so you expect rejection. Here are some of the statements that are connected to this life trap. I live with a great deal of shame about myself. I have secrets that I do not want to share, even with people that are closest to me. I devalue my positive qualities. One of my greatest fears is that my flaws will be exposed. The next life trap is subjugation, and if this applies to you, then you tend to sacrifice your own needs and desires for the sake of pleasing somebody else. In childhood, you were likely subjugated by someone close to you. This might have been a parent that was very controlling or that was worried about your well-being, so he or she chose to give you very strict rules. Now, in adulthood, you tend to recreate the same situation by choosing either partners that are very dominant or partners that are very needy. Both of these decisions will lead you to recreate the same pattern that you already know from your childhood. Now, in terms of emotions, there are two that are driving this behavior. One being guilt and the other one being fear. And because of them, you might be pleasing other people more than you should. Now let's take a look at the statements. I feel guilty when I put myself first. I give more to other people than I get back in return. I worry a lot about pleasing other people and getting their approval. I let other people control me. You are more likely to let other people take the lead if you're not very convinced of your own capabilities. And I believe that this is the reason why this is a common life trap for dyslexics. Now we come to unrelenting standards. Now, as a child, you experienced or learned that nothing was quite good enough. And that is, of course, something that is quite common for dyslexics. And you were also held to exceedingly high standards. So anything less than perfect was considered to be a failure. Now, in adulthood, you apply those same high standards to yourself, and that you do to a point that it becomes unhealthy for you. The main feeling that is associated with this life trap is pressure. You likely have unrelenting standards if the following statements apply to you. Nothing I do is quite good enough. I deserve strong criticism when I make a mistake. I strive to keep everything in perfect order. And I must look my best at all times. If your life experience caused you to develop a dependence life trap, you feel unable to handle everyday life without a considerable amount of help. In short, you rely a lot on other people. Now, in childhood, you were made to feel incompetent, especially when you were trying to be more independent. This might have happened while you were reading. Now, in adulthood, you seek out very strong figures on which you become reliant. And the main emotion that is connected to this life trap is a feeling of being overwhelmed with everyday life. Let's see if the following statements for the dependence life trap apply to you. I cannot trust my own judgment. I'm not capable of getting by on my own. I find everyday life overwhelming. And I feel more like a child than an adult when it comes to handling the responsibilities of daily life. The social exclusion life trap tends to develop if you have an unusual characteristic about yourself. Obviously, dyslexia can be such a characteristic, especially if it comes with an additional diagnosis, like, for example, ADHD or, let's say, autism. Now, as a child, you were excluded from your peers, and now in adulthood, you maintain this pattern mainly through avoidance. You might be quite comfortable with one-on-one conversations, but feel a lot more uncomfortable in group settings. The main emotion that is connected to this life trap is loneliness. Now let's see if the following statements apply to you. I feel disconnected from the community at large. I feel fundamentally different from other people. I feel dull and boring at parties and other gatherings. I never know what to say. I always feel on the outside of groups. So at this point, you might be feeling a little bit bummed about, all these different life traps that are a part of your life. But I think it's important to realize that, it's actually really good that you realize that these things are a problem. Because if you don't know about it and these things are in the dark, then they're kind of ruining your life without you knowing about it. And that's way worse. So that is, step number one, realizing that it is a problem. Then step number two would be to become more aware of how you are keeping your specific life trap alive. I've described how to do that in an earlier video of mine, and if you want to take a look at that, then you can click over here. Essentially, you're taking a look at your behavior and your thoughts and rules of life that you might have that are keeping your specific life trap in your life. Now let's say you've done all of this and you have a good idea of what's going on, but you still find yourself in a little bit of pickle because you're scared of the new behavior. What you can do in a scenario like this is you can work with a avoidance hierarchy. So you write down all the action items that you have. If you struggle with subjugation, for example, you want to speak up more, then talking to your boss might be one step that you would like to accomplish. And that is then connected to a certain amount of anxiety. And like that, you have different tasks. And then you're gonna rank these tasks in terms of how much they scare you. And then you can slowly work your way up the hierarchy and desensitize yourself. And that would be an effective way forward. Now, towards the end of the second version of this video, I hope that you have not only the tools to identify your personal life traps that apply to you, but also have a better idea on how to overcome them. As always, I really appreciate your comments down below, and thank you for watching.